Perry here. I want to do this video to tell you about the troubles I've had, not just personally, but in electrifying an acoustic instrument. I'll tell you quick stories about where I went wrong and the troubles I had back at the beginning, and maybe you can avoid these things. So, going back more than 30 years, I joined a pretty slamming jazz rock group called Gamelan. We were signed to MCA Records and had on the Billboard jazz charts for a short blip in history and stuff. Pretty cool ride, a great band. And they were what I call a climax band. We'd start quiet and build up to a frenzy with this solo, and then the next person get their turn, which is very exciting for the audience, but demanding on the gear, especially for violin. So what I had was this very violin, my steadfast acoustic. I put a pickup on it. I think I had a Barkus Berry at the time. That's all I had, a little dot that was built into the bridge, and plugged it into an amp because I needed to be as loud as electric guitars and the drums. And when the band started quiet and I did my thing, everybody loved it, me included. And when the band got louder, when they kicked in behind me, they get a little excited, they kick in a little behind me, which made the music exciting. But what happened technically is that the F holes on my violin would receive their sound. So the loud drums, loud bass guitar, loud guitars that I was standing no more than a couple feet from at these small clubs we played sometimes, their sound would get in my violin and vibrate the box, and the pickup would start picking up them. When we were quiet, it wasn't a problem. Maybe if I had a direct recording off my amp or something, you could hear a little bit of ghost of them, but the pickup was picking up them pretty well. I didn't figure it out at first, but every time the band got louder, the audience members would say, "We can't hear the fiddle, turn the fiddle up, turn the fiddle up." There, from the front rows, there, "We can't hear you." So I'd reach to take hit a long note, reach back and turn my amp up louder, which I thought would be better, but it really was only amplifying the problem. The problem was when I turned my amp up, I was turning everyone up, including because the drums and everybody was coming through my pickup and through my amp. So it was a big mess, and violinists have struggled with this for a long time. People would put duct tape over the F holes to try and keep the sound out. Didn't really do a very good job. They've stuffed their fiddles with foam. It kind of ruins the sound quite a bit, as you can imagine. So I struggled for quite a while at the beginning when I was in that band, and finally ran into Eric Acito of Ithaca String Instruments, and he sold me an instrument I don't have anymore, but it was an acoustic chambered body, a smaller body, and not unlike this one here I have here. It was still an acoustic instrument. This was made by Shar, and they discontinued it a while back. This is actually thicker. His instrument was quite a bit thinner, so it had less surface area for the outside noises, drums, and guitars to hit it, and it had no F holes for their sound to get in. And it was quiet, like you'd expect an electric instrument to be. This one is quite acoustic. It's still all, traditional tone woods, flame maple and spruce top, but just made so that no sound can get out or no bad sounds can get in. It has the same piezo pickup. This one has a Fishman pickup on it. I later went to a Fishman pickup on my acoustic for other things, but this kind of approach was much better. Was it perfect? No. Piezos, especially when you start closing the F holes and getting rid of them, it makes it sound even more stuffy than piezos by their nature, their squeezed nature are. Because if you don't know how piezos work, they're crystals. Somehow the magic of crystals, when we squeeze them, they emit a little bit of electricity, which creates a signal that goes to the amp. I don't know how it works. You can ask a scientist. I'm not sure. Or maybe a metaphysician would figure that one out better in the crystals. But that is how it works. And by nature, it's being squeezed. It only works when it's squeezed. So they sound kind of squished and squashed. The piezos by nature. It was the best we had. I used it for decades. All right. So later, after I left Gamelan after about 8 years and did other things, I ended up in a gypsy jazz group, Babik, which did quite well. We were playing festivals and we were on this kind of college charts and getting promoted here and there. And we played with symphony orchestras a little bit and stuff. We had a show of the Django Reinhardt music that was arranged for us to have the orchestra play along with us. Pretty cool to have a 100-piece backup band. We played a couple hundred dates a year for a while. We were playing a lot, and I went back to the same old acoustic violin because I wanted to sound more like Stefan Grappelli in that style. So I was back to square one a little bit. I wasn't doing the electric thing. It'd be like showing up to an acoustic gig with a Fender Strat, a classical guitar gig with a Fender Strat. It's just the wrong sound. You can still play the same notes, but so I went back to this violin and put another Fishman pickup on it and hoped for the best. And it was stuffy. Now, the band, it was Gypsy Jazz, if you don't know, doesn't have drums, so I was a little safer. We don't play super loud. We play very excitedly, but it's all acoustic instruments: acoustic bass, two acoustic guitars, and me. And a little singing, a little whistling, all acoustic stuff. So that band was very exciting too, and we could crank, just as hard as any rock band, but not that loud. So it wasn't as bad. I didn't have a problem with the other instruments coming in so much. But after we put out a couple CDs worth, and we were doing one of our CD release shows at a big club in my hometown of Buffalo, New York, the sound engineer, Mike Rourke. Hey, Mike. He came up to me in the break and said, your fiddle really does sound pretty canned, It doesn't sound like it does on the record, because he had just heard us in the studio where I used a nice quality mic and the pickup and mixed them together beautifully and all this stuff. So I realized, oh yeah, I'm hearing it right here and hearing the guitars naturally on the stage. We had a little bit of monitors going on, but I was hearing it here acoustically, but the audience wasn't hearing any of that. The audience was only hearing the canned, nasally, plugged nose kind of sound. I was, oh, darn, it was a big gig for us too. We sold a lot of CDs or CD release. The audience was really into it, but I realized I was disappointed in that. It's like, I kind of went back to square one a little bit, didn't I? Back in the early Gamelan days. So what we decided to do was I bought a microphone, a nice AKG microphone, and one of these little things that's hardly bigger than your thumbnail, and it would be mounted right here, right behind the bridge. Now this did a great job of hearing the air and feeling the air. It's sounding very natural. I didn't always trust it, because some gigs, the monitors were too loud, the PA was too close. The microphone could pick up everything else even better than a piezo pickup like in early Gamelan days. So I always had both. I had, for a long time, I had a microphone and the piezo pickup, and I would blend them and kind of be able to police them. If the sound guy I didn't trust, was doing the right thing, I could tweak and move one way or the other. Now, sometimes if we were doing a festival and had to just get on stage fast and do a quick sound check, they kind of freaked out. What are we sending? We got use 2 channels for you? We're not going to happen. I said, I'd have to put my foot down and say, I'm not playing if it's not going to happen. I'd have to be kind of belligerent about it, because I wanted to sound good, of course. Better, it would have been smarter for me to have a little mixer and mix them myself and send the mix to the sound engineer. But that worked, except, like I say, microphones don't always pick up everything that you want. They pick up everything. If you are excited, playing, and breathe hard, the air out of your nostrils will go down and hit that microphone. It'll sound like thunder coming through the big PA system out front. That was one problem. The other problem is if the band gets a little lost, you go, "The bridge, you idiots!" into the band guys. That would hear you perfectly. So it was a little bit problematic, and the PAs will be better for that. It doesn't pick up your voice, at least, lets you really shout really hard. But so there's problems with all this stuff a little bit, and that's the journey I've taken. It did sound better with the microphone mixed with the piezo out in the house. It sounded much more natural, which worked for that kind of music way better. Now, again, fast forward, if I'm playing more jazz fusion again these days, the acoustic fiddle will not work if I'm with a loud drummer, even a moderately loud drummer. I don't like super loud drums anymore. So, and there's other places I covered this stuff, but I now I'm a proud patent owner of a new electric system for electric violin. It's a whole different concept, and it sounds quite acoustic, quite clear and dynamic, much like an acoustic, but it's electric. And it's based on 2 internal magnetic pickups, like mini guitar pickups, and the bridge sits on a metal plate which has bends, and the bends dangle above the pickup, just like a string would dangle above a guitar pickup. It's quite an elegant system, and it sounds really good, and it's almost impervious to outside noise. It can feedback a little bit if you're really super cranky. Who needs to play so loud that it hurts your ears? Not me. I need to be able to stand toe-to-toe with the drums, but not get louder than the drums like the old days in the 60s. This instrument can do that. The only thing that really could hit this metal bar that the bridge sits on, and it's pretty impervious to outside vibration. It sits on a pad, so it kind of isolates itself in the body too. The body is affected somewhat, and the wood affects the sound somewhat, how the string vibrates and the sound, the way that the metal plate jiggles. But this is a much improved version. It sounds quite acoustic, and it can be pretty loud. It can also distort like a champ. Piezo pickups, if you try to do rock and roll distortion, sound terrible. It's like plugging an acoustic guitar into a Marshall stack. It's just not made for it. This can do kind of all the above. It can do the Marshall stack thing, and it can sound pretty close to acoustic and be clear and dynamic too. So I'm really proud of this. There'll be many more videos about me showing off these outlaw fiddles. This is what I call the EBT, the electric violin traditional shape. I have the EB3, which is the oddball shape you might have seen in other videos, the asymmetrical shape. So that's a little bit of my journey of what went wrong. So acoustic violin is great, but if you're getting too loud of a band, it doesn't work so good. And if you're trying to really sound acoustic like it was, a microphone is great, but it has problems too. So the trick is not to play too loud, and try not to let loud sounds get in your violin if you got to play with drummers and electric guitar players. So that's the basics of the evolution of my problems. Acoustic violin with a pickup, an acoustic environment with no sound holes that was more isolated from outside noise, and now a fully and truly electric violin is my new thing. All right? So more on that later. I hope you learned something from this.